Participate. Look, I do believe that President Trump is sincere in his desire to bring the war to an end. He often says that he wants to do so for two main reasons. Firstly, he wants to stop the bloodshed, and secondly, he wants to save the U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars. I actually think there's a third reason that's probably more in the front of his mind, and that is for his legacy. He sees this as an opportunity to broker the greatest deal in geopolitics right now and to cement his name as one of the great peacemakers against all odds. But the problem is Putin's fully aware of this, and he's dragging it out, and it seems to me at this point the most charitable description of the White House when it comes to Ukraine talks is one of losing interest. But in reality, it's probably more like losing control. The fact that every 2 weeks or so we get a strongly worded post on social media saying that we'll know in 2 weeks if Russia is serious or not about peace talks. The fact that while Ukraine has acquiesced and agreed to basically all the conditions and terms outlined by the White House, and the fact that Russia hasn't done any meaningful effort to show any good faith in negotiations or talks, shows me that President Trump has sort of lost control of this issue. And he's frankly looking weak, and he's not going to like that. So he's either going to move on from this whole issue altogether, or he's going to have to make a decision on where he wants to come down on this issue and how it might or might not impact his legacy. So like I said, from the Russian point of view, I think that they are stalling for time. They know Trump's losing interest, and there's, as we've heard from Secretary Hegseth today, there probably won't be much left in the pipeline to give to Ukraine in the coming months, and Russia will see an opportunity, or they will stall until the upcoming NATO summit, and then maybe that same week make a sign that they want to start engaging in talks, even though they probably really don't want to, but they'll make a sign that they're willing to, in order to divert attention away from the NATO summit and put the attention back on Moscow. So I think we have to be prepared for our counter-programming of the week of the NATO summit from Moscow as well. As for Ukraine, I think at this point, well, let me back up. My preference would be for us to give Ukraine everything it needs to win. And by winning, I mean the full restoration of Ukraine's internationally recognized borders of 1991. But the reality is, we're not giving them the stuff they need to accomplish this goal. The Biden administration didn't. The Biden administration gave Ukraine just enough to survive, but never enough to win. And we're sure as hell know the Trump administration isn't going to do this. So they're in a difficult spot. So Ukraine, how I see it, they don't want to surrender, they want a just peace. And they want some sort of security guarantee that there isn't going to be a repeat of this in the future. On the first issue, just peace, I think this can be achievable with the right pressure. I think speaking to my Ukrainian interlocutors, they would be happy with a formal recognition, a formal non-recognition declaration on the 4 occupied oblasts in Crimea, that the international community, or at least Europe and North America, will not recognize these lands as being part of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainians understand that they're de facto controlled by Russia, but that's where they want to leave it. They don't want any legal recognition. And then I think they want a meaningful push to bring the stolen children back, the release of POWs, and a meaningful reconstruction effort. I think that would qualify for most Ukrainians as the just peace. In terms of the security guarantee, it gets a little more complicated because the Trump administration has made it clear that they are not willing to, allegedly the bridge to NATO last summer is looking more like the Kerch Bridge as we would like to see it. unfortunately, for Ukraine. And the bridge to NATO, it'll be interesting to see what is said or not said in the upcoming NATO summit declaration. I suspect the whole damn paragraph will just be deleted, but we'll have to see. But with NATO not an option right now, because not only President Trump, and there are others in Europe who don't want to see Ukraine in NATO, we have to start getting creative about the security guarantee. And I like to look at it as a layered approach to security. And I'll conclude here because I realize I'm straying, as Trump says, I'm doing a weave. But I'm bringing it back to the question. The first layer needs to be some sort of monitoring mission. It could be civilian, unarmed. It could be using technology along the line of occupation, as I like to call it. The second layer of this needs to be that European component, boots on the ground, in sizable numbers that can serve as a part of a deterrent. The third layer needs to be the U.S. component. We know we're not going to put troops on the ground. We're not going to commit to any security guarantee. But we can provide key weapon systems. We can provide training outside of Ukraine. We can even, I would say, restart the National Guard State Partnership Program between California and Ukraine. That could be a low-level way to get U.S. boots on the ground to kind of get more involved, but in a way that is below the threshold of what might ring alarm bells in the White House. And then, of course, defense industrial cooperation. The fourth layer, I would say, is keeping Ukraine on that path to NATO and EU Euro-Atlantic integration, whatever that might mean. At this point, it doesn't mean NATO membership, but it could mean NATO and Ukraine establishing a center of excellence for 21st century warfare, so we can learn the lessons that Ukraine has learned the hard way. It could be inviting Ukraine to participate in the NATO response force. There's a precedent for this. They have done so in the past. But doing whatever we can to get that NATO flag and that Ukrainian flag flying together before we can finally get Ukraine across the finish line and into the alliance. And then the fifth layer,